Mr. President.
Hi, Glenn.
How are you, sir? Thank you so much for joining us.
Good.
Good.
Well, thank you.
So, are we going? Is Russia going into Ukraine, and what does it mean for us?
Well, I think, first of all, I know how you feel about it, but first of all, this is something that never would have happened. This is not even a possibility, what's going on now. This is a total lack of respect for him and for our country, and it's a disaster. Now, whether they go in or not, maybe Putin doesn't even know, because I really think he wasn't going to go in. But after watching a couple of those press conferences and the statements that he's going in, like routinely, I think he figures, well, nobody's going to stop him. As I've been saying, NATO is a paper tiger because it's going to break up anytime it has a challenge. It really never had a challenge until this. And you see Germany breaking up and others breaking up. They don't want to fight. And all that money is, spent on NATO from the United States. Before I got there, Glenn, in my opinion, the United States was paying 100% the cost of NATO. They were all delinquent. Other than 8 countries, they were delinquent. They weren't paying, or they weren't paying anywhere near what they were supposed to be paying by agreement. So NATO is looking like it's seen better days. And it's just, I think maybe Putin was just trying to negotiate. And he's a good negotiator, and he's dealing with people that don't have a clue. And I think what's happened is they've just said, go in. We're not going to do anything. We're going to put sanctions on. We're going to sanction you. And I think to take over a country for sanctions maybe isn't such a bad deal for him.
Jeez. So yesterday, CNN was reporting that the president, Biden, called the leader of Ukraine, and it didn't go well, according to Ukrainian officials. And apparently Biden said that Kyiv would be sacked, is I think the quote that they used. Now the Biden administration is saying that's not true. It went great. We had a wonderful conversation, and we never said any of those things. Who do we believe here?
Yeah, well, they also added that, but we might have said it, but they shouldn't have leaked it. It's a bunch of clowns. It's very sad for our country. It all started as bad as the border is, and it's the worst in history, including drugs coming in. But as bad as the border is, it really started with the horrible and incompetent way they got out of Afghanistan. We could have gotten out with dignity and strength. We were set to do that. I got it down to 2,000 soldiers from, as you know, many times that number. And we were set to do it. And you take the military out last, not first. They took the military out first. And then they left the $85 billion, and we lost 13 people. But, not only did we lose 13, we had many people really badly hurt. And nobody ever talks about them. But the way we got out of Afghanistan, I think that's when all this stuff happened. If you look, President Xi of China was watching, Putin was watching, Kim Jong-un was watching, and we became overnight a whole different country in terms of levels of respect. I think it was the most embarrassing day or week that this country's ever had. I just grossly incompetent.
So let me ask you this, because I agree incompetence plays a role, but also, it's really hard not to say, your batting average is so bad. I don't know if you're really on the team. When it comes to Ukraine, how much does Joe and Hunter Biden's, workings over in Ukraine complicate the matter?
Well, a lot of people, I noticed this morning, a lot of people were saying that because of Hunter Biden getting all of that money from Burisma, I guess you could say $164,000 a month or $83,000 a month, different numbers, but in any event, a lot, $3 million up front, because of his great knowledge of energy, when in fact he has no knowledge. He had no knowledge of energy.
Well, he has
It was a bribe. It was a payoff. I think it makes it very difficult for them to do what they think they should do. But you have that problem with Russia too, because the mayor of Moscow's wife gave him $3.5 million. What was that all about? That's a lot of money. What was that all about? And of course, you have it in China where they gave him $1.5 billion to manage, where he'll take in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for himself. So he's conflicted in every level, no matter what country you go to. The whole thing is a disgrace.
The news today, again, back to Ukraine, is that Putin has put significant trauma teams with the troops. That's not just positioning. You don't normally do that. Should we be involved in this? Should we at least be arming them? What should we do?
Well, Europe should be totally involved. When Germany made the pipeline deal, I sent a white flag to Angela, who I got along with actually very well. Different side of the plate, but that's okay. She had views that were a lot different than mine in many cases. But I sent the white flag of surrender because Germany made a deal with Russia with the pipeline. And Nord Stream is a disaster. And I'm the one that brought that out. Nobody even knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to talk about it all the time. Then they'd say, oh, he's weak on Russia. Putin would say, you're killing me with this pipeline. But I got it stopped, and it was stopped. It was stopped cold. But I told Angela, I said, you're tying your whole country into Russia because once you're going to get energy, and don't listen to them when they say 20%. It's 72% or more of their energy is going to come out of Russia. That means that Russia controls them. Russia owns Germany. In one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen, where they're getting their energy, a large portion, and remember, it's over 70%. They're trying to say it's 30 and 40%. And even if that is too much, but it's over 70%. They closed their plants. They closed their nuclear plants and other plants. They got rid of coal, which was, seeming it to greatness because, frankly, the coal was, they had great ability. Right now they're having brownouts and every other thing. But they're getting their energy from Russia. So Russia has total control over Germany. And Germany's saying, oh, well, we don't want to fight them. They can't fight them because of what's happening with the energy. So it's very interesting to see. But I would really say it is a European problem. Don't forget, we've been paying for NATO. We've been paying for really 100%. Until I got involved, the numbers went down, down, down like on a roller coaster downward. And I got involved, and after my first meeting, I said, you guys aren't paying your bills. And I was very strong on it. Obama would make a speech and leave, and other people would make speeches, Bush, and leave. They wouldn't say anything about it. And I said, you're not paying your bills. And I asked about it. Stoltenberg, who actually was my biggest fan because he couldn't believe what I did. And we had a meeting, 28 countries. We had a meeting, and I said, you got to pay your bills. And one of the presidents stood up and said, does that mean you wouldn't defend us if we haven't paid our bills? I said, that's what it means. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, which almost didn't get reported. But the bottom line is the next day the money started flowing in. Darn right. So they paid the money, but they don't have the heart to work together. And if you're not going to work together, but this is a big problem. It's really not a problem for the United States. The only thing is we look so bad, we look so weak, we look so stupid after Afghanistan.
Well, and
it's
the messages that China and all of our enemies are receiving for this are quite remarkable. When we're obviously talking to number 45 and probably number 47. When you were in office, you said sanctions on Russia 16 times. You had the Nord Stream 2 pipeline sanction, indictments on Russia 5 times, military action with a counterattack in Syria, lethal weapons were provided to Ukraine, which hadn't been done, $10 million in funding to the Navy. You kicked 60 Russian intelligence operations out of the United States. You withdrew from the INF treaty. You were really tough on Russia. But the thing I think that made the biggest impact, and I'm wondering what role this played with the reversal from Biden, the biggest impact, the way to keep Putin under wraps is to collapse the price of oil, which we were doing by being energy independent. What role did that play in this?
I did that too, and And the nice thing about, I appreciate that list. You know, some of those things I don't even think of. We did all of them, and I appreciate that list. I'm going to get a copy of that, have that sent immediately to me. I think I'll mention it this weekend. Yeah. I'm in Texas where we have I hear an incredible crowd. They don't like to talk about crowd size. Yeah. You know, they never mention it, but we could have 85, 90,000 people this weekend in Texas. It's going to be great. And I'm going to mention those things that you really do. You bring up items that I've done so many of them. And I actually, one other thing, I got along great with Putin, but he said, you're killing me on some of this stuff. You know, I had a good relationship with him. He would have never done what he did, what he's doing here. And by the way, that Len, I really believe that he was doing it to negotiate. And then he saw these people falling all over themselves not to be involved. And he said, wow, I can go in here easy. So I think it's much different. I think 2 weeks ago, he had no intention of doing it. He was just negotiating and doing his shtick, which he likes to do. And now he's seeing it's like a clear path because of the stupid people he's dealing with.
And what would you say to Putin now if you were talking to him?
Well, now is a whole different story because now, and he's really ready to go. And, you know, people are amazed at the newness and sophistication of his weapons. You know, I don't know if you've been seeing that, yes. But they are really surprised by the weaponry. I'm not surprised because that's what he does. I mean, that's what certain of these people do. Kim Jong-un, he's got some pretty powerful things going in there too. And he's starting to do tests like he's never done before. He's really seeing the same thing. They're all watching. They all watched what took place in Afghanistan. Not the withdrawal, but the way they withdrew. And it's very sad. I think right now it's a whole different thing. And I must tell you, I was asked a question last night. I said, I wouldn't want to tell you what I tell him because, you know, you can't tell everything. You know, you're playing a very highly sophisticated game of poker. And, you know, you can't go out to the public and say, I would tell him this or I would tell him that. You got to do what you have to do and tell him things that are very tough. But you can't reveal that to the public until maybe after it's all done. But I think there are ways of talking him out of it. One of the things that you mentioned was so important is I drove the price of oil down, and that really hurt Russia and was killing OPEC. And now we're going back to OPEC because we don't have oil. Jeez. It's amazing. It's not even believable. We were energy independent just a year ago, and we were going to be double the size of both. And now we're like a bunch of beggars. We're going back to OPEC and asking them to give us oil. We're going to Russia. You know, they're giving oil to the East Coast. Can you believe it? We had so much oil, we didn't know what to do with it, Len. I drove the price down. In fact, I drove it down so low, I had to get it back up a little bit for the industry itself, right? But that was killing for Russia, what I did. And now they're talking about $150 a barrel.
Which was the point of economic collapse in 2008. It was $130 a barrel in 2008, and it caused...
That's right.
It was the final straw.
But who would have thought when I was doing the oil, when we had it down to $25 a barrel, who would have thought we would have ever had this conversation that we're having right now?
So everything that you...
$150.
Everything that you look at, there is no way that you can say these people see America the same way America has always seen America. This is just not a series of mistakes. And you want to talk about systemic. These policies and this kind of thinking, systemic throughout the system. And inflation is just beginning. Mr. President, is there, I mean, are you meeting with people? Let's just pretend that you might be running for president. Is there a thought of people getting together and making a naughty and nice list on how you can clean this hornet's nest out quickly?
Well, we can, but don't forget, we're having, in my opinion, 10 million more people here. Many of the people should not be in our country. Many of these people are dangerous, very, very dangerous people. Not only, you know, those that plane lift from Afghanistan was a disaster because only 3% of those people should have been here. You're going to be reading about this for years to come. Some of those people that came off they're terrorists, and they should not be in this country. And then you see what's happening at the southern border. Last week, 121 countries were represented by people that came in. But the numbers are much worse than you're hearing. The numbers you're hearing I had the border really at the lowest level ever, and that included drugs. And all they had to do is go to the beach. They didn't have to do anything. It was so good, getting better. The wall was almost complete. They could have completed the wall in 3 weeks. It was supposed to. It took me 2 years to get it started because the Democrats sued me 11 different times. You know that. I won all of the cases, all of the suits, and then I proceeded, and the wall was almost finished, and then they refused to do it. It's not even believable what we're dealing with. I thought that was incompetence too when they showed the open borders, and then I realized this is really their philosophy: open borders, no voter ID. They cheat on elections. That's all they're good at, by the way, is politics, cheating on elections, but they have a horrible policy. Think of it. Who would have the kind of policy? They're going to raise your taxes to a level that nobody's ever seen before. That's going to be next. Who can get elected with this? They get elected because they cheat like hell in elections. That's about it. It's about all they can do well. If they use the same genius, by the way, for Russia, Ukraine, China, for North Korea, if they use the same genius that they do at cheating on elections, we'd have no problems.
Mr. President, thank you very much. God bless you.
Well, Glenn, thank you. Great job you do. Thanks a lot, Glenn.
God bless.